Look at that. Everybody does need homebrew.
That's right. I realize that we should either have some libation company sponsor us, hint, hint to whoever's listening, or we should brew our own stuff. And then on the label, perhaps, we'll put the link to an episode. And I don't know.
Like a little QR code. You scan the bottle and it brings you an episode.
Yeah.
Now, that would be cool.
It would be
It's
cool.
almost like we're a marketable podcast and someone should get on this already. Sorry, my ability and my marketing powers are just not that. I'm not that capable. I'm sorry. I can record the show. I can edit the show. I can write scripts. I mean, I'm talented and I wear a lot of hats, but marketing is just one.
We definitely
I can't quite get the rungs onto.
We definitely went to school for history. Now, I mean, there's a reason that marketing is its own world.
Yeah.
So,
and those people, they can sell anything.
Yeah.
Like, somebody accidentally almost sold me life insurance. I was like, I already
almost.
No, but like I was buying in.
I was close.
I mean, I was almost there. Anyways, this is not what anybody came here for. But I mean, I thought, so we're recording these out of order, and then by the magic of editing, it's like that time we went up to get to Franklin, and Jeff kept saying, "We'll fix it in post. Don't worry." It's like, that's exactly what this is: fixing it in post. All of these will come together in through the magic of radio, right? In a sequence of episodes that you'll be able to listen to. But I thought last night with John Tracy and talking about Kim Letterman, I mean, that's a great story, and I don't want to give too much away, but I thought the episode went really, really well, and is going to really kind of be a great way to end our discussions of Gettysburg.
He left us with a recipe, because I know our YouTube folks can't really see the comments off to the side of the screen, which is probably a good thing sometimes. But we were left with a recipe for beef tea.
Did you try it? Did you make it?
No, but I have been perplexed all day long. I've not been able to stop thinking about it because it scares me, it disgusts me, but I'm interested.
Yeah, you have my attention and my curiosity.
Yes, both have been piqued.
So, anyways, dear listener, make sure, and viewer, because you're the important one in this now, because we need you to boost those numbers. Anyhow, the series on Gettysburg is forthcoming. It's kind of rolling out bit by bit. This is going to be the first episode. So, if you want to hear all 4 episodes all in one swoop, the only way to do it is to become a member on our Buy Me a Coffee page. And you can head over to Buy Me a Coffee, find the link down in the description there. For $5 a month, you can listen to the podcast early, and you can get our series all in one run. That way you don't have to sit around and wait for it. If you're a normal listener, and we love you, normal listeners, we do. But if you're a normal person and you're a normal listener, you consume this every week. But some of you are abnormal. Many of you are abnormal and a little sick, and we appreciate that. And we love you for it. And just for you, for $5 a month, you can get all the episodes all at once. So head down to the Buy Me a Coffee page, check that out. Remember, Lumber History is brought to you by Civil War Trails. We'll come back for more commercials here in just a little bit. And I think what we'll do is we'll go to a commercial break, and when we come back, we'll bring on our guest for tonight's episode. How's that sound, Bob?
Perfect.
Okay. All right. And we are back, and let's go ahead and bring on to the stage now Melissa Winn. Melissa is the marketing director for, hey, Bo, marketing director.
Yeah.
Hey. Yeah, I heard you talking about marketing. I'm like, marketing is fun.
Anyways, the marketing director for the National Museum of Civil War Medicine. Prior to that, worked with the American Battlefield Trust, and at one point in time, the extinct now, unfortunately, HistoryNet. But Melissa is a brilliant public historian, an amazing photographer, and just all around good person to have on your bus when you're with your emerging Civil War bus tour, because you're moving so fast in those things, and you never really stop to document it or think about it. And then you get a giant Gmail file, a Google Drive file from Chris Mikowski that's got like 700 photos, all from you. Great.
Uh-huh.
A wonderful little oh hey, by the way, I did that tour.
That sounds exactly right. Mm-hmm.
Well, welcome to Humber History.
Thank you so much for having me on. I'm excited to be here and talk about Gettysburg and photos and all those things.
Bo, let's jump on in.
Yeah, I imagine that being in Gettysburg is surreal for some people. I have yet to make the pilgrimage. I need to. I've been seemingly everywhere but Gettysburg. So Melissa, tell our listeners what is cool about living or being around Gettysburg.
So it has its own real feel to it. It has so much history, of course. There's so many stories wrapped up in the landscape itself. I'll never forget the first time I actually went to Gettysburg. I actually went about 10 years ago, and it was with the editor of Civil War Times magazine. And I had just started working on that magazine, and just driving around it, it felt so vast and confusing, and you could kind of tell how much there was there to know and experience. But I didn't really have a grasp on all of the pieces and how they fit together. And I was so excited to kind of learn how they all fit together and to know the battlefield better. So for me, one of the great things about being able to go to the battlefield frequently is, just the better understanding of what happened there, how the pieces fit together, and this real majestic space, and just the carnage that happened there, the strategy that happened there, the personalities that clashed there, that were made and taken from us there. There are so many things in this 3-day battle that happened there, but also the battlefield itself has its own history, which I think is almost equally as interesting as the battle history. The memorialization of the battlefield, the veterans that went back there. It has so many pieces of history for years, decades after the battle, and just being able to go there and sort of feel it, which you do when you're standing there amongst these things, the monuments, the signs, the cannons, and then just the landscape itself. Being able to stand around all of that, you really do feel the history. I hear so many people talk about their first introduction to Civil War, or how they became interested in the Civil War. And so many of them are kids that went to Gettysburg or saw Gettysburg, or, some piece of Gettysburg entered into their life. And that's what drew them to the Civil War. So I think it really is just this majesty about it. And it's, to me, fascinating to just be there and experience that.
Well, that sounds awfully familiar. Anytime somebody asks, "Oh, how'd you get into Civil War histories?" Well, everybody else got to go to Disney World, right? And I went to battlefields, so I guess I was stuck with it. I was just cursed. I don't know.
Yeah, it's definitely a generational thing.
Oh yeah. And the thing that's really great, I think, about a place like Gettysburg, or Westerners who will appreciate us, saying this Vicksburg or even Shiloh. They're all protected by the National Park Service. They're all places that have been preserved for us as Americans to go and see where, you know, the decisive moments in our nation's history unfolded. And you kind of alluded to that with the personality clashes and the carnage and everything that happens there. But there's also a whole, like another layer where you're drawn just because of the place, just because of the enormity of it.
Yeah.
You know, how can you stand at you know, a national monument as opposed to a national park, one of the smaller kind of, trying to think of one off the top of my head, you know, just the kind of the blip on the radar parks, and then try and compare it to a place like Gettysburg, which is just so sprawling. You know, it's like going to Shiloh and then taking a step over and going to Chickamauga, Chattanooga, which is one of the biggest parks, if not the biggest military park in the country. Mm-hmm. And you're overwhelmed by the size of it.
Yeah.
How do you tackle Gettysburg? You know, it's just this, you know, it's 3 days, but it's the only battle that I've allowed to have a bookshelf in my library room, because everything else is like, you know, 1 or 2 books on it is fine. I don't need to know. But I feel like with Gettysburg, there's always something else to add. There's always another way to look at it. There's always another aspect that we've just overlooked or forgotten, or a piece of the battlefield that doesn't get written about enough. So how do you try when you're there to make it connecting or connective for you? God, that was a long question. Sorry.
No, I think that's actually, I think, how you kind of have to approach the battlefield, because it's so big and because it encompasses 3 days. You know, I know, I remember when I watched Ken Burns, how great he was at, you know, breaking down the Battle of Antietam, you know, and it's 3 battles, and, you know, he kind of breaks it down and explains that. And it's much harder to do that with Gettysburg. You know, there's multiple, if you break it down that way, multiple battles on multiple sections of field on multiple days. So it's very difficult to encompass everything that's going on, you know, in that space. And again, that's just the battle, you know. There's so much more history involved with it. So I really do think it is sort of piece by piece. I think that's actually, for me, one of the things that's been, I feel very fortunate that my real big introduction to the battlefield of Gettysburg was through the magazine. And we weren't ever really trying to tackle the whole story of Gettysburg. You know, you know, we would do, and I'm talking about Civil War Times magazine and America's Civil War magazine, which are the 2 magazines I worked on at HistoryNet. And we were always doing specific, you know, histories, you know, like we were working one point on a story by Gary Edelman at American Battlefield Trust about the 4 hills of Gettysburg. So you have to be focused, and then you kind of find that piece of the history. We did another piece about Coster Avenue, the fight there, and the Brickyard and the mural. And so then you kind of get immersed in that history. And then, you know, we did another piece about Culp's Hill, and then we did some more pieces about Culp's Hill after they did some of the preservation work there just recently. And so then you get that piece, and you just kind of piece by piece, or for myself at least, piece by piece, have been able to pull the battlefield together in really kind of digestible chunks, so that when I'm there now, that I have a real experience with it, because I really can understand what happened over 3 days in different parts of the battlefield. But I certainly didn't learn it all at once. I didn't sit down and read, you know, one book and understand the, you know, from front to cover, whole Battle of Gettysburg, you know, whatever, Bruce Catton or something, you know, and okay, great, I understand it all.
There is somebody somewhere who read Stephen Sears's Gettysburg book and was like, all right, I know everything about it. Let's go.
Yeah.
And then proceeded to bore his family to tears driving through the park as he tried to remember the pages of that book. And I'm not speaking from experience here. That's not me. That is not me. When I'm there, it's a guide, okay? Licensed Battlefield guides. That's the only way to do it.
Yeah.
In my mind. But
Melissa, in Gettysburg, and this is kind of something that I noticed kind of just in my travels, and especially at areas where significant events happen in American history, it seems that the people of the town have this uniqueness about them in the preservation of what happened at Gettysburg. And I'm thinking particularly a couple years ago, I actually went to Boston, Massachusetts, and it just seemed that the people of downtown Boston seemingly just were the epitome of what used to be colonial America. At least some individuals who were sick in the head, like myself, of course. But do the people of Gettysburg have that same uniqueness? Like they have the sort of drive to preserve what happened there?
Yeah, I absolutely think so. I think Gettysburg is a pretty small town, really, when you look at it. And, it really is sort of time capsuled, during this period. And it's for sure its biggest, draw, its economy, of course, I'm sure, is built around the tourism aspect of Gettysburg, the battlefield, the tourism industry. Of course, it's got the college as well, and some other aspects to it. But I don't think you can be in Gettysburg and escape Gettysburg. That what happened there and why it's important. So I think there's a lot of dedication to what happened there, and most of the business in town really is wrapped up in preserving that memory, helping people understand it. I mean, I find people to be very forthcoming and helpful, and a lot of times you can get into different parts of this field and Civil War history especially, and people like to tell you what they know or what you did wrong or what you don't know. And I think, obviously, I think the people of Gettysburg could very easily do that. They're walking around in that history. So, but they're not. They're very welcoming. I think they are really dedicated to keeping the history alive as well. So I think it's a great community that does that.
I mean, it's been now several years since I've been back, but the kind of the vibe that you get from the town is that it's a very modern town in its like sense and sensibility. But then when it comes to preserving the battlefield or knowing its history or being involved in its history, it seems like they kind of have their finger on the pulse of everything that's going on in the park. And two, like I've never seen a group of people get more riled up, more aggravated about things that happen at a national park where, they're not going to get rid of the beavers. And then all of a sudden there's like thousands of people in the Gettysburg NPS comment section. They're just going mad about beavers. And it's like, man, like we get it. There's another thing to be upset about. I'm positive of it. This is the thing. And I'm local, lived here my whole life type of thing. And you see that in there, but you also see like this, I think, very personal love and almost like an ownership, like they're stakeholders in it. And it could be because of what you said, is the town kind of financially is supported by people coming to the park. You want to maintain and sustain that resource. So let's do something fun, right? You go to Gettysburg with lots of groups. I've seen you on the American Battlefield Trust tours. Again, following around a Matt Atkinson and Chris Mikowski tour has got to be a real hoot and a half for just about anyone.
Yeah.
You get up to Gettysburg and all of a sudden you unlock like the next layer of hoot and a halves, because not only do you have like a Matt Atkinson, but you've got Gary, you've got Doug Dowds, you've got all these Tim Smith, all the different voices that are like the pantheon of Gettysburg. What's your favorite tour experience, public history experience with either a group that you've led or been with, or what have you?
Well, I would say my favorite experience has been the Civil War Institute is one of my favorite experiences up there. It's a pretty, I mean, it's almost feels like a family of people who get together. It's a kind of a longer conference, so I think you spend a lot longer with people when you're up there for it. And the tours are exceptional. I feel like they're really well honed to different subjects, and I just think they've all been fascinating. My favorite tour, and it might be because I've done it multiple times, so it kind of sticks with me, is a tour that I've done first of all, well, with Civil War Institute, with Dana Schoaf, who was the editor of Civil War Times Magazine and now works with me at the museum, and Dr. Jim Broomall, who was at the George Tyler Moore Center for the Study of the Civil War, but is now down at the University of Richmond. They did a tour of Culp's Hill, and it was really fantastic to learn why the monuments are where they are, what the fighting was like that happened up there, but the personal stories that go with it as well. And Culp's Hill is one of the only places on the battlefield where fighting happens on all 3 days. So it really does encompass multiple parts of the battle history for all 3 days. So you really get kind of an overview of it too. And that was my favorite for sure. Then I've had multiple experiences on Culp's Hill that have been really fascinating, that kind of go hand in hand with that tour, which is one of the reasons it's kind of one of my favorite parts of the battlefield. First, they did the preservation work where they took down lots of trees on that part of the battlefield. And it was incredible to go there and when they took those trees down, to be able to see exactly how the battlefield, and it wasn't exactly how, because of course there were a lot fewer trees even then during the battle, but to be able to get a sense of the battle lines, and for so long I would drive through Culp's Hill and the monuments just looked like they faced a line of trees. And when they started to clear that section out, suddenly you could see where the Confederate line was that the Union line had been facing, and the battle started to make sense. And after doing this tour, I understood why the regiments were placed where they were, how thin the line was there, and how people ended up on that part of the battlefield. And to me, that was really fascinating to know and to see. Then actually one time we were there for the magazine doing a story about some of the preservation work they were doing, and they were doing some archaeology there. And it was incredible because it was like yellow flag, yellow flag, yellow flag, yellow flag. They were pulling mini balls out of the ground that had not been out of the ground for 160 years. And, they kind of asked, do you guys want to try? And we're, of course, yes.
So
yeah, absolutely. So they let myself and the editor, and we were with actually John Banks too, try digging up the bullets and finding and holding a piece from the war that had just come out of the place it landed in 1863 for the first time in 160 years. So that part of the battlefield to me has a lot of meaning, and I just think the stories there are fascinating. So any experience I have with that area has always been really great. And again, I had actually done that tour at the Civil War Institute twice. So for me, it helps to, that repetition really helps. I wish I could read a book and then just walk on the battlefield and say, I remember all this stuff or whatever, but I need repetition. So for me, those things have been really great. And again, that conference, I think, is a really meaningful one. But I think they all are. I've also really enjoyed, Gary is a great battlefield guide. And the other tours that I really enjoy are the Image of War seminar through the Center for Civil War Photography. And that was probably my first tour of Gettysburg, was through that organization. And that's just a whole other level, obviously as a photographer myself and as a photo researcher too, standing on the battlefield with, they print up these photographs in 3D of the battlefield as taken in 1863, and you stand there with your 3D glasses on and view the photo exactly where it was taken in the spot. They call it sort of a 4D experience because you're standing right where it happened. That was incredible. It's really fun to see the battlefield through another medium and to even try to understand that piece of it. The photography piece of Gettysburg and the photography that happened at Gettysburg after the battle is, again, its own complete history and it really kind of talks to human nature and what people are interested in. And that I find fascinating. So those tours are always really fun too. I go to that seminar every year now, and I think we've been to Gettysburg 2 or 3 times in the last 10 years. So never gets old.
Photography in the American Civil War has always been very, interesting to me, because that's really for the first time in American history that we see, with our own 2 eyes, the hells of war, in a still photograph, and I imagine, taking similar pictures today, versus these pictures in 1863, they still hold so much power. They say a picture's worth 1,000 words, but I mean, when you're talking, July 1863, I imagine there are more than just 1,000.
Yeah.
So I imagine that's incredibly, special to you, as someone who, is a, photography researcher, and who looks into all these kinds of things. And, according to Joey, you're quite the photographer yourself. So, I imagine that's got to be, hold a special place in your heart. And so when you do give these tours to a wide variety of different people, right? People come from all walks of life to come see Gettysburg, because really, if anybody knows anything about the American Civil War, they probably know Bull Run, and they may know Gettysburg and Appomattox Courthouse, right? So somebody somewhere knows something about Gettysburg, right? What are some, very typical questions that you get from these, visitors to Gettysburg?
I think the typical questions, and in Gettysburg, of course, are people really trying to do what we're talking about, pull pieces together. Okay, I understand that over there. How does that fit with this? So, because there's just so many pieces to it. It definitely depends on where you are on the battlefield, about what kind of questions people are asking. I know specifically for, photography at Gettysburg, people are interested in what the photographers were interested and what they were going to the battlefield for. There, of course, I think there were more than 250 photos taken of the battlefield after Gettysburg, and in those months following the battle. And so people are interested to know why one photographer went to one part of the battlefield and didn't go to the other. People, I think, have asked a lot of questions too about Well, there's a lot of people that ask questions about Joshua Chamberlain. He's popular. And then also really talking a little bit about, what some of those myths are, not myths, but, those things that happened in sort of the popular culture, and how are they real, or, what else happened here? I think, again, to go back to the idea of when people start to ask questions about, even like Little Round Top or Joshua Chamberlain, of course, those are very interesting because of the Gettysburg movie. And so some people have a lot of history based on popular culture, which I think is great. I mean, I think Gettysburg is so great because it pulls so many people into this topic, and people who might end up being historians themselves. Again, there's so many that their story started at Gettysburg, but also people who are just interested in the surface of what happened here might be interested in Gettysburg. And so I think some of those things are really interesting, and people ask good questions about, those types of things. Again, on tours and stuff of places that aren't Little Round Top too, I think a lot of times people or some of tour guides, historians, public historians try to start talking about why some of these places might even be more relevant than Little Round Top or what happened with Joshua Chamberlain. And again, I think those stories are great. I think it's great that people are interested in Little Round Top, because we can talk about everything else because they got there because of that.
Well, no, you said something in there that caught my attention. Bo, you saw me walk across the room to the shelf of shame.
I did.
I think that's a good name for it at this point.
Yes.
So you talked about like seeing how one piece of the battle comes together, so then everything else starts to make sense. So I thought what we could do is show this in book form, how this happens, because this is the easiest way to trace it. And Bo, I think you know what's going to happen here. Okay, so started out with this. Gettysburg, second day by Harry Fans. Okay. I was like, oh, wow, look at that. A good overview of the second day. This is good. I can add that to my list. Oh, now, something really drew my attention. I never thought about what's happening at Culp's Hill and also at Cemetery Hill at the same time. Okay, so let me get Harry Fans' other book, Gettysburg, Day 2, Culp's Hill, and Cemetery Hill. And I was like, oh, well, actually, what's really fascinating is the action that's happening just away from Cemetery Hill. And I need to see now the attack and defense of Cemetery Ridge. So then, Ted Savas gets some more of my money. And then I thought, actually, what's really, really fascinating to me is what's happening in the center. Longstreet's assault in the middle of the day on the second day, particularly what's going on with McLaws's division. And I really like Barksdale's brigade. So let me buy a book on Barksdale. Well, then you buy one book on Barksdale and you go, actually, one book isn't enough. So you buy a second one. And then you buy a third one. And now all of a sudden, you have another one on order right now, Mississippians at Gettysburg, thanks to our good friend, and name drop him now for the fifth time on the podcast, Scott Bumpus, who finally is going to join us to talk about his experience at Civil War Institute.
Oh, good. He's fun.
Great. But then I was like, well, if I know about Barksdale's brigade, I need to know what happens with Joseph Kershaw's brigade, and then what happens with Hood's Texas brigade, or Texas brigade, and the Texans, his division, and then oh my God, well, what about Law's Alabamans? So then all of a sudden, I've got the entire Confederate attack pulled out, and I went, well, now that I know this,
there was a double army there.
So I read the entire biography, American Scoundrel on Dan Sickles, and then I said the real heroes of the second day, Federal artillery. So I need to know all about them. So then I end up with Guns of Gettysburg. I don't know why it's not unblurring. There we go. And then the second one. And because you need to piece it all together, you need to run these stories all together. The only way I think to get a total picture of it is to A, immerse yourself in it, B, go there and walk the ground, and C, read every different perspective that you can. And when all of these fail, there is the fail-safe of the official records. So
I think too what you just said about walking the ground is so true of Gettysburg, but all there's.
I think it's the universal rule. You have to walk the ground.
The terrain is so important and so unpredictable and hard to describe. It is so hard to describe how quickly something comes into view and out of view unless you go through the undulating terrain of some of these places and can really understand how thousands of men couldn't see people firing at them, or how that actually gets set up because the terrain is either working in your favor or against it. And there's no, I mean, at the American Battlefield Trust, we just would always say there's just no substitute for the power of place, just for that understanding. But again, when you're standing at Gettysburg, you just feel it. There's a feeling of this sort of majesty of the place and the history that just kind of hangs in the air there. And you can't replace that. And again, you really can't replace the understanding that you get from literally walking in exactly the same steps as those people did on those days. I've been doing a lot of first day stuff. I just actually finished Dawes's from the 6th Wisconsin, his memoir, and then the new book on the 6th Wisconsin came out a few months ago by Jim Martin. And so I've been kind of reading a lot about 6th Wisconsin. I'm also from Wisconsin, so it's been very interesting. And that's the same, exactly what you're saying is how I think people are able to piece this battle and this battlefield together is, whoa, this is really interesting. Now I want to know more about the 2nd Wisconsin. And wait, the 7th Wisconsin was in Herbst Woods too. Wait, I also want to find out how they got there. And Reynolds was shot while he was placing the 2nd Wisconsin. Let me read everything about Reynolds. You just kind of go through all these pieces and start to piece it all together, and which I think is extremely fun. But I think
it's also a very expensive hobby.
It is expensive, yeah.
So, Bo, before we kind of dive into, do you want to do photographs first, or do you want to do Buhiki first, Bo? What are you thinking?
I like photographs.
All right, let's do photos. So we've got this picture up right now. And dear listener, this is the perfect reason for you to go over to our YouTube channel. And if you're already on our YouTube channel, this is the best time for you to like and subscribe. Be sure to hit that little thumbs down there and subscribe to Homebrew History. But that way you can see what we're talking about. But right now we've got a great picture taken by Melissa on the Gettysburg Battlefield. We've got what looks like a 3-inch ordnance rifle facing out over kind of maybe is it dawn, kind of early morning image here. So, for the listener, we have to super describe this. For the viewer, he's going, yeah, okay, we get it, jackass.
I too have eyes.
So where are we on the battlefield?
This is on East Cemetery Hill. And this is actually the number of times I've been there, and I also like to run, so I go running in the morning a lot. I have found that East Cemetery Hill is the perfect spot to catch the sunrise. And so this day I actually went out there, and there's also usually when the temperature is correct, there's a mist that comes up around the field. And you can catch it for just a little while. And it's just stunning. And again, when you're there at that time of day, it's very quiet. And you just have such a sense of peace. And that the light, you can see actually when I was kind of going through my photos to pick out the few favorites, which I call Sophie's Choice. But I can see that I kind of am drawn to the light that, especially here, and how it hits the landscape, but also monuments. And this is one of the best spots on the battlefield to hit in the morning to get that dramatic lighting. So.
It could definitely be a postcard.
Thank you.
It feels like it's like the next cover of a Hallowed Ground magazine. I'm just
Yeah.
If anyone we know is listening.
I know a few people over there.
So which one do you want next? Do you have a choice? Or should I just
well, I would definitely say maybe since we're on East Cemetery Hill, we could go towards the next one, which is the Ohio Monument that's on Cemetery Hill. That one. That might be one of my favorites that I've taken at Gettysburg. And it's because this morning was actually one of the ones where the fires were burning too. So that was extra hazy in Gettysburg. And again, it's early morning. So I was just standing at the right spot and I thought, oh my gosh, the silhouette of that monument is so dramatic. And the color, because of the haze, is so diffused. You know, the light's diffused and the colors are muted. So nothing, I remember I used to do a lot of family photography. And one year I was doing some Christmas card photos. And I think we had a hurricane warning or something like that, or, you know, and so it was super gray and cloudy outside, but I had rescheduled this family a couple of times or something. And so I show up and they're like, well, we're so sorry it's not sunny. And I'm like, no, this is the best light. You know, when you're a photographer, non-photographers think that sunny days are the best days. You get this beautiful sunlight, and that is the exact opposite, because really what it does is give you harsh shadows. Nothing is, you know, half your face is in light, half of it is not. You can't put things next to people because they create shadows, and it just kind of sharpens the colors. So cloudy days are much better, and if it's going to be sunny with clouds. So this was just one of those days where it was just perfect. And again, it was morning, it was quiet. I love the mountain range in the background, you know, and again, this is East Cemetery Hill. It's just a beautiful place to go in the early mornings when you're in Gettysburg.
All right.
And that's Ohio. That's Ohio Monument.
OH. All right. Thank you, Bo. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. What else? What do we want to hit next?
Well, maybe we'll just go through the monument photos, but there's another one. Yeah, this is the first Minnesota monument.
That's one of those personal favorites of mine too. When you spend as much time on day 2 as the book pile here is, like, you know, you just think about no, and I think what's great about your pictures is they reflect this incredible beauty and this great, you know, you're talking about the light and the way it falls on the monument and all this stuff. But this is a place where immense suffering and death and carnage unfolded, and yet 160 years later, we have this beautiful marker, and on this beautiful field, and captured kind of just so elegantly for the eye. And it's a wonderful way for us to see the beauty eventually that comes with these places, and to remember that at the core of it. But okay, tell me all about my next new favorite monument here.
I think so too. I love this monument. I actually like how the monument has action built into it. You know, the soldier isn't standing there. The soldier is not at rest, or he's moving into battle, and it's right on the line where they did. I was there for when the Liberty Rifles actually did the recreation, with the full number that was in the regiment.
Mhm.
And when they went down, and then they bring back the very few survivors. It's so dramatic. And to see it again, the power of place, to see it exactly where these men ran in knowing that they were sacrificing, that they were a sacrifice. But that was what their duty was to sacrifice, to slow down the fight, but they did it. And so to see this monument, every time I see it, it's just, it's just so moving. And again, because the soldier on top is moving and kind of running right into the field that they ran into, it's just so dramatic. And again, this was another day when the moon, you can see, was kind of out when it, longer than it normally had been. And I thought, oh, I got to get the moon in there. And, I like the angles too, that it just all sort of moves in the same direction over that field where they went into sacrificially, but they did it willingly.
I know, it's like thinking about mid 19th century, early 20th century era warfare, because we have, Civil War is still, you have, your lines of battle, and then the First World War kind of develops into, more trench warfare. But I mean, essentially, once you get into no man's land, it's, no man's land for a reason. And I don't know if you can convince people of the 21st century to do that. So these are men of intensity. And that's what this, Minnesota monument is giving me, is it's intense. War is an intense thing, but, it is a very beautiful, monument to remember their sacrifice. And it's something that I hope, when people see something, like this, that they remember, all the blood that is shed at Gettysburg so that we can continue the American experiment today.
Yeah. And to Bo and piggyback on you there, like, we'll put the link in, Melissa, we run in similar circles and know mutual friends. So the Liberty Rifles guys, they've been to Carter House, they've been to Carnton. So I know a lot of them, and I knew that they were there at Gettysburg. So we'll put the link to some of their videos that they did when they did the first Minnesota charge. Because, Bo, I think by this time you and I were both well out of the hobby, but to have recreated the regiment man to man and to go across the same ground, there is, again, talk about the power of the place, right?
Yeah.
There's something about seeing them kind of disappear into the tree, and all of a sudden they're gone, just as, any observer, Winfield Scott Hancock, who sends them into action, would have seen them just simply vanish from sight. We have the same view, the same viewscape.
Worst field of dreams ever.
Yeah. Oh, God.
Yeah.
How about this one?
Yeah, this is another one. This was, I think, actually on the same day where this moon was really hanging around well into the morning when the sun was coming up. And I love this monument because he's taking like one step. So I have multiple, I don't know which monument this is, but it is also on Hancock Avenue. And there's a big barn there, and it's right by the Bryan Farm, which is an African-American who lived on the battlefield. And, well, he lived there, so his story is really fascinating too. This is right across the street from that. It's, again, this, like, there's a bend or a curve in the road, and you just kind of come up on this monument, and across the street, from here, you can't see, but it's the field, and then across that is the field of Pickett's charge, and I really love that from the road, you're seeing this man moving away from you, and again, to me, it's just so incredible to put this person in his space and this, I think, is such a common soldier monument to me. Every time I see it, I just think about the common soldier and how that common soldier story is so important, and that those are some of the things that, as historians and people in this field, we're starting to talk so much more about, which I think is so important, is telling the common soldier story, talking about the common soldiers, their experience in the battle, after the battle. That's one of the things I think is actually really interesting about this new 6 Wisconsin book is, it's the long battle. It's the battle, not just there, it's after, you go home. What's the battle like after that too? And for the, these regiments as a whole, but the common soldier by themselves as well. And every time I see this monument, it just feels like it encapsulates that common soldier experience to me.
For what it's worth, I looked up what monument it was by looking at the Bryan Farm. It's the 111th in New York.
Okay.
For whatever that's worth.
Yeah, no, that's good.
I had to geek out on Google Earth for a second. Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, I can imagine that as a unique experience. And Joey and I's friendship was actually forged on a Civil War battlefield.
I think our friendship was forged over really, really bad, like nacho cheese.
And it was an attempt
that sealed the deal.
Joey came back from a European trip, and he said, "I'm going to cut now," and thank God. But Joey's cooking skills have gotten extremely better since then. But the first night he ever invited me over for a meal, it was because I'll never forget it because of the anguish that it caused me.
That's good, huh?
Yeah, that good.
I think a hamburger helper, but I forgot the hamburger.
I think that needed to be a hamburger. Help me bring it out back and throw it away. No, it was a schnitzel he tried, and it was a German gravy that he tried, and it ended up tasting pretty good. But both he and I were sufferers of food poison, and then we haven't looked back since.
Oh my! Well, that'll bond you right away.
It sure will. It'll either break you or bond you, one or the other. And now we're here.
Now we have a podcast.
Now we have a podcast. Yes.
Yeah, that's good.
The height of success.
Yeah. So Melissa, tell us about what are we looking at here?
So this is a fall day. This is actually on Munchauer's Hill, I believe it's called, and it's right next to Little Round Top, but it's really an extension of Little Round Top. And what I like about this is it kind of gives you a soldier's view because it's grown up a little bit. But you really think about all these different stories about the fighting in the cornfield at Antietam, or the peach orchard at Gettysburg, and or on Little Round Top with the rocks and the foliage, and on Culp's Hill, everywhere. We experience it and we sort of look at it from afar, we're not standing right in the middle of it. But I was here and this was all kind of grown up. And I just thought it was such a neat feeling of this sort of view of the battlefield where you couldn't see it. You were sort of being blocked or experiencing the landscape around you. So I love skies, and again, you can kind of see the moon hanging around. So I love that. I love it when you're able to sort of capture those two things together. And to me, this was sort of capturing just that other viewpoint of what the soldiers were experiencing that we really don't, because a lot of times we don't leave the path or we don't go out into the field. I mean, sometimes that's advised, but it's definitely advised now. But that they didn't have that luxury. They had to. You get up Little Round Top, however, and you're going around huge rocks, and huge terrain, or the when your line is going across, the landscape, you're supposed to stay in formation as much as possible, no matter what the obstacle is in front of you. And this to me is just sort of like, these are some of the obstacle, but it's also very beautiful. And, again, just has this kind of feel to me. I like that part of the battlefield as well. Again, it's this sort of extension of Little Round Top. We really understand the battlefield so much differently with hindsight than they did at that time, and to me, that's fascinating. I think watching our understanding of the battlefield is, it's almost as important, because again, this battlefield is, it's what draws many people just to the subject alone. So our remembrance of what happened there and how we understand it. One of the tours I was on, they talk about how they didn't call it Little Round Top, they called it like Little Rocky Hill or something. That just even understanding how people at that time, they didn't call it the Peach Orchard. They didn't know Little Round Top like we know Little Round Top, or the Angle, or they didn't even call it East Cemetery Hill. But we know those iconic places so much differently than they do. So this to me is more of a soldier's eye view.
This is one of the things that I always had like a puzzled look on my face when Eric Jacobson would say it, that when he was talking about his book and that he had written with Rich Rupp, he talked about this conversation where Rich told him, we know more about the Battle of Franklin than any soldier who ever fought at the Battle of Franklin.
Yeah.
Because you have the whole breadth of what's unfolding there, not just what the soldier can see right in front of his file number moving across the battlefield. I imagine, it's the same thing, just times 10 or 20.
Oh, yeah.
We got time for one more. Let's do this one.
Okay, let's talk about Gibbon. This is Gibbon on Hancock Avenue. So again, this is the morning. I love the morning light at Gettysburg. This is another spot that's a really great spot to catch it. I love the monuments and their silhouettes on the battlefield, because without the monumentation, it's still the battlefield, but with the monumentation, you have this feeling of the history that happened there. And I think the monumentation is fascinating too. There are so many neat stories about, even the first Minnesota monument. I think they had a different plan for their monument. It got rejected. They had to go back to the commission with new designs. I think each one of those monuments has history as well. There's a Vermont monument. Of course, I can't remember the number of it right now, but where they're memorializing a commander who had taken a battle axe, into Pickett's charge with him. And he really kind of did it out of a treasonous act, because he had been taken into custody because he let his soldiers go for water. They locked him up, took his gun, and then he kind of gets out. He says he's going to Pickett's charge, grabs an axe and runs for it. So when they did the monuments, they said you cannot put him on this monument with a battle axe. It's actually a treasonous act, and holding this axe up. And so they weren't able to do that, but instead they get a little hatchet laying on the side on the monument. There's so many stories in the monuments themselves too. So I just love their feeling on the battlefield, and you really get a sense of it. Look how much movement Gibbon has here, and you don't even have to see him or the details. You just see a silhouette, and you can see his movement in this monument, and I think that's amazing. And one of the things I'll say too about photography and monuments, this monument and all of the ones we've seen, they're surrounded by multiple other monuments. So photography lets you focus on just the one story. It really kind of lets you view the 1st Minnesota by itself, whereas on the battlefield, it's very moving, but it's surrounded by other monuments too. So that's one of the things I love about photography is it captures one view that you're looking at, one vision and one story right there.
I know a lot of my Masonic brothers will go up to Gettysburg. There's a big Masonic monument over there at Gettysburg as well. And every time people go up there and they're a Mason somewhere, they always take a picture with it. And I'm like, man, I really need to get up there.
All I'm saying, road trip 2026.
Yeah. Where are you located?
We're in Louisiana.
Oh, okay.
So it's a 25-hour drive. I looked it up.
Wow.
It's a 3-dayer.
That's a trip.
That's a long drive.
And Joey doesn't fly except to go overseas. So
okay.
That's it. You're not getting me on an airplane. Not without an FAA. No thanks. I can say that on this podcast because it's ours. Well, time for.
So, Melissa, what Boohickey history is a part that all good historians want to dispel. Some myth, something that is just absolutely incorrect, taken out of proportion, something that is just ridiculous. What is something that you found, at least in your experience surrounding Gettysburg, that is just Boohickey history?
Ooh, surrounding Gettysburg, huh?
Stumped her.
Yeah. Well, I guess I would say that, again, bringing it back to sort of this understanding about, the important spots on the battlefield. There are so many people interested in Little Round Top because of where it is. And then again, someplace like Culp's Hill, which really doesn't get that much attention. What I think is interesting and sort of and photography helps debunk this, which I think is kind of cool, is that Culp's Hill actually was one of the most important and first visitor spots on the battlefield. Now it's mostly ignored. It's hard to get to, but at the time, right after the battle, it had so much war damage in the trees. And there were several photographs taken by Matthew Brady on that part of the field that it was a huge stop, and actually so much so that people sold advertising on rocks at Culp's Hill. And it was I think it was the 50th anniversary. They actually had like a tour around the battlefield, and Culp's Hill had multiple stops on this tour that you were supposed to go to. They told little vignettes of stories there. Little Round Top had 0. So again, I think it's fun to sort of see the difference of, what parts of the battlefield, we find important today, and, which ones we're still paying attention to.
Is it the turning point?
Oh
boy. Well, that's a long answer, but
stir in the pot a little.
Okay. Well, I did hear you talking to Evan Portman about this, so my answer is probably different than Evan's because I don't know if it's a turning point, so to say. Is it important? Yes, of course. I mean, I think it really depends on how you define turning point. Again, I think when we look back on it, we think of it more as a turning point. And again, the same as we look at, we know these iconic places like the Peach Orchard or the Angle. At the time, I'm sure it was monumental. So is it extremely important? Yes. I mean, it's also extremely important because there are certain cores that are decimated. They restructure cores and, merge lots of regiments together and stuff because of what happens there. I don't know if it's a turning point, though. But
it may not be a turning point, but I think it is a proving point that Bobby Lee can't fight in the North.
Yeah.
Maybe. I mean, he gave a good fight, but
For 2 days, he did pretty well.
Pretty well.
Uh,
Hey, but it takes three pitches in baseball to get you out, I suppose.
he still would have had several more to go.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that I picked up from Matt Atkinson. Somebody said, they were questioning Lee's leadership, and he did a whole tour on it, right? And he just rolled out with his, I thought it was a great answer. He goes, if you question the leadership, you have to question his opponent too, because for 2 days he did pretty well, and not to mention the month-long campaign to get here. And to get out of here. So he really challenges.
Yeah, which he does,
right?
Yeah.
He lives to fight another day, goes on another 2 years. Meade ascends to command, stays in command of the Army of the Potomac all the way through the end of the war.
Right.
So I'll say the same thing now, Bo, that I probably said during Evan's episode, and you probably just listened, so maybe you can help remember it. But it's like the idea of a turning point, I think, has always been a little crazy, because I don't think that I wouldn't say Vicksburg is a turning point in the same way I wouldn't say the Tullahoma campaign's a turning point or the Atlanta campaign's a turning point. There are no turning points in wars. They're simply exiting phases. New phase, old phase. We're leaving behind the Army of Northern Virginia and the Army of the Potomac fighting of 1862 in early 63, and we're now shifting into what will become an all-out slugfest by the spring of 1864. And it's another mode of warfare, but it's not a turning point. So I'm sure I said
well,
that.
And that's not really so much because of Gettysburg as much as it is, honestly, probably Grant, coming into command and having a different approach to the war than had been in place before. So, and that's not till 1864. So,
the war is changing. That's the whole idea.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that's very true. I think we did a piece for Civil War Times, actually, and I think it was with Jennifer Murray, Dr. Jennifer Murray, and about, is Gettysburg a turning point? And, we talked a lot about how, yes, of course, there are so many important things that happen there and changes that are made, but are they turning points? I mean, a turning point also indicates that, there was one way that was happening, and then we shifted massively from it in a different direction. I'm not sure that that's what happened. I absolutely think it was extremely impactful, and again, in so many ways, but a lot of those ways are in hindsight.
And I think that's a good way for us to go in towards our what's in our cup. Now, Bo, I could talk about how Gettysburg it lives in memory only because of November of 1863 when Lincoln goes there and places it in our memory forever. But whatever, we could do that all day long.
There he is.
There he is.
Oh yeah, Lincoln.
He's a history buff.
Oh, that's nice. I like that.
I love that he's got Mary Todd right there on his bicep tattoo.
Oh, that's great.
The unofficial mascot of the show.
Yeah.
Oh, very nice.
Other Lincoln.
Oh, I'm sure I have a Lincoln somewhere. Oh, here, I got a Lincoln.
Oh,
nice.
And Grant.
Very nice. Very nice. Somewhere I had a Lego Lincoln. And my brother-in-law built him for me, and I put it up on my shelf, and when we moved, I dropped it.
Oh, no.
And tragically, it was the back of his head that broke. And I was like, oh, God, I can't do this. So I just picked up all the pieces, and I think I threw it away.
No.
Melissa, we've got a little segment here on the show. It's what's in your cup. What's one of your favorite places to grab a drink, or what are you drinking right now?
Okay, well, I'm going to leave you with a recipe too. So what's in my cup, I'm going to say it's really water, but I'm going to say it's Switchel, okay? Switchel is like the Gatorade of the 19th century, and it has apple cider vinegar in it. It has, sometimes it can have rum in it, but it also has maple syrup or molasses. The apple cider vinegar, of course, is extremely important. It has lots of water and ginger as well. So, but lots of consumption of it because it was used to really kind of like a Gatorade, to help people replenish, some of the vitamins and minerals that they needed. Also, apple cider vinegar is great for kidney stones.
And I'm imagining right now Gatorade and Switchel are probably on like alternating hands right now in that nice Virginia, Maryland heat wave.
In the heat, Now, I would be remiss though talking about Gettysburg and especially if I'm going to tag on John Tracy's Letterman talk to not mention that we sell Letterman Lager at the National Museum of Civil War Medicine.
Nice.
Yes, it is a home brew. It is brewed for the museum, and you can get it online or you can stop in the store and get it. And it's a great beer. It's got Letterman's picture on the front, and it's only sold at our museum by Antietam Brewery. So it's brewed. So
yes, the garnish is a little amputated finger.
Oh, God. Oh, you're batting 1,000 tonight. Bo, what's in your cup?
All right. Well, what was in my cup was a company that is called Scatterbrain. They make a dark chocolate whiskey, and I was hesitant, but you know what? If there ever was a dessert whiskey, that's it. And now it's gone, and now I'm sad.
Joe does not look convinced.
Definitely not. He's concerned with most of my drink choices. Because I try at least to have a new brew every time I come on here, but then when we do four episodes in a week, I'm like, I'm gonna just mix this. I'm gonna mix that. You know what? We'll figure it out.
I'm just gonna melt chocolate in my whiskey and try that.
Just saying.
Oh God, that just doesn't. Is it sweet?
Yeah, of course it is.
No,
but it's a dark chocolate sweet. So it's not as like. It's not like you dropped a Hershey's chocolate bar in there. No. It's like it gives a nice, like, earthy aftertone.
Like you dropped a special dark in it.
Yeah. Yes. See, she gets it. I don't know.
I don't know. I'm just here to disappoint you. It's green tea tonight. Yep. But it's Taylor's of Harrogate, which is the official tea maker for the Prince of Wales. So I have that in my cup, and it was great. It's a strawberry vanilla. If you follow me on Instagram, you saw that's where I have a little tea stand at work, and that's on my tea stand this month. Buy a 25 pack of that, and it'll last me a week and a half, 2 weeks, but at best. Highly caffeinated man that I am, but Taylor's is on the tap on the brew for me tonight. Yeah. Anyways, there's that. Melissa, this has just been great because it's fun to just sit back and talk about the battle, talk about Gettysburg, talk about your experiences there without diving into, the nitty and the gritty and getting so far down on the weeds. Even though a couple of your pictures brought us way down in the weeds.
That's what they do.
Yeah.
Literally. Yeah, literally.
Oh my goodness, we got so much bigger there. There we go. All right. Bo, Melissa, thanks so much. Dear listener, viewer, thanks for watching. Thanks for following along with us. And remember, if you subscribe to Homebrew History on Buy Me a Coffee, you get all these episodes all at one fell swoop. I mean, what's not to like for $5? $5 whole. That's nothing. $5 whole. You can buy, I don't know, a box of Taylor's of Harrogate tea. You can buy a T-shirt with Abraham Lincoln's face on it. You can do anything for $5, but you could also throw $5 our way and be able to listen to this all at once. So check out that Buy Me a Coffee page. And remember, if you've watched all the way through, like and subscribe. I can't say it enough. Like and subscribe. You should really like and subscribe. Subscribe, like, set your notifications. I don't care. Do whatever you gotta do.
Know your friends.
But Melissa, thanks so much, Bo. I'll catch you tomorrow when we're back for yet another recording on Gettysburg, and we'll get that out to our listeners very, very soon. Till next time.
Cheers, everybody.